if you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously.
As I am sure most of you probably know, Donald Trump was recently involved in yet another assassination attempt. Now, I'm not exactly sure why they're calling this an assassination attempt, considering there were no shots fired at Trump. Seems to me like the more appropriate classification would have been an assassination plot, but for whatever reason, they are clearly calling this an assassination attempt. And while you had prominent Democratic leaders like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden immediately come out and condemn political violence, it did not take the right long at all to start laying all of the blame at the feet of the Democrats and their rhetoric. So I want to take a look at some of these claims coming from the right, and then a little bit later, we'll take a look at some of Donald Trump's actual incitements to violence that he's been doing ever since 2015 or so. We'll kick things off by taking a look at Maria Bartiromo saying that, well, if they're going to say that he's a threat to democracy, then of course it's their fault. Let's go ahead and take a look.
More of the same, with lots of smears from the Democrats calling Trump the next Hitler, a threat to democracy, primary spreader of fascism, and an existential danger to the nation. Do you believe that this rhetoric is behind these attempts?
There's no question. In fact, the rhetoric is increasing the heat, not diminishing it.
Okay, you cannot just say, because we call out things that are true, that somehow we are to blame for your dear leader getting shot at. Okay, Donald Trump is an actual threat to this democracy. Thus, he is an existential threat to the nation as we know it. Donald Trump tried to overturn the free and fair election in 2020. He assembled a mob of his supporters to attack the Capitol and try to block the certification of the 2020 election. And that was after he assembled fake electors to try to overturn the will of the people in several key battleground states. There is no other way to describe it than a threat to democracy. And if he's going to try to knock down some of the main tenets of our democracy, like the peaceful transfer of power, then he is a threat to this nation. We can say things that are true without going so far as to incite political violence. That is not something that you hear coming from people on the left. And as we will see a little bit later, Donald Trump has been one of the main contributors to the political violence and the escalating rhetoric that we've heard over the past 10 years or so. Let's go ahead and move on to Kayleigh McEnany trying to make a few other arguments and give a couple other examples of why the Democrats are to blame.
That being said, the two assassination attempts have come against former President Trump, both of them. Really unprecedented to see this.
She is right that this is unprecedented. Donald Trump was target of an assassination, one right after the other, just a few weeks apart? It is pretty unprecedented. But we also need to take a step back and look at Donald Trump and his own rhetoric. You can't allow him to spout off at the mouth and say whatever he wants while telling the left to shut up because we're somehow causing this. It just does not make any sense.
And then in the immediate aftermath, you have someone like Rachel Vindman, whose husband was the Trump impeachment witness for the first one. She comes out and says no ears were harmed. Carry on with your Sunday after.
Rachel Vindman did say this. Apparently, she ended up taking that post down and realizing it was a little bit flippant or so. But this is not violent rhetoric. This is just a poorly timed, poorly executed joke. There is no violent intention behind that type of statement, so it is quite rich that you're trying to make that accusation.
Afternoon, you've lost touch with humanity. And then when I think back more broadly, if you believe hook, line, and sinker, things that have been said about President Trump, you believe that he wants a national abortion ban.
It was only a few days ago that Donald Trump stood on the presidential debate stage and refused to say that he would veto a national abortion ban. It is not unreasonable for Democrats to think that Trump would sign a national abortion ban, especially because he was asked that specific question on the debate stage and he refused to commit to signing a veto for an abortion ban.
That he is against IVF. You believe that he's for Project 2025.
We cannot let conservatives continue to downplay Donald Trump's connections to Project 2025. More than 100 people who worked in Trump's administration or who are in Trump's inner circle now are the people writing Project 2025. Donald Trump has spoken at Heritage Foundation conferences where he praises them for laying the groundwork for his next administration. The Heritage Foundation is the main author of Project 2025. Donald Trump is intimately involved with these people, and they are likely to play a big role in a second Trump administration.
He wants a bloodbath, that he called neo-Nazis fine people, all of those fact-checked as false. But then you see Hakeem Jeffries, 2 hours after this incident, tweet out, extreme MAGA Republicans are the party of a national abortion ban in Trump's Project 2025. He then puts out a statement condemning this, but then this morning is right back to Project 2025 language. We all need to look at our rhetoric on both sides, not perpetuate mistruths, because we are in a very dangerous time.
So, try to understand what her argument really is here. Democrats cannot point out Trump's ties to Project 2025. They can't say that he's a threat to democracy, even though he tried to overturn a free and fair election. We can't say that he's a threat to this nation because he's trying to tear down parts of our democracy and undermining our institutions all of the time. She's basically telling the Democrats to shut up, be quiet, don't point out anything that is actually true because some lunatics tried to kill Donald Trump. You're basically asking Democrats to stop campaigning because you believe that we are somehow to blame for pointing out the very real threat that is Donald Trump. This is just an absurd argument to make. And it's quite rich that she's trying to say that we need to not perpetuate mistruths when we've spent the last few days or so trying to combat the disinformation and misinformation spread by J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. They're trying to claim that Haitian immigrants are eating people's cats and dogs. And Springfield, Ohio is now in turmoil because of this. Bomb threats, schools being evacuated. All because Donald Trump and J.D. Vance wanted to perpetuate mistruths. Let's go ahead and take a look at J.D. Vance trying to say that, well, nobody's tried to kill Kamala Harris yet, so it must be the Democrats' fault.
You know, the big difference between conservatives and liberals is that no one has tried to kill Kamala Harris in the last couple of months, and 2 people now have tried to kill Donald Trump in the last couple of months. I'd say that's pretty strong evidence that the left needs to tone down their rhetoric and needs to cut this crap out. Somebody's going to get hurt by it.
Okay. We cannot forget that the first guy who tried to kill Trump, who actually got shots off, was a Republican. Apparently coming from at least MAGA sympathetic family. He was a conservative. It wasn't a Democrat. It wasn't a crazy lefty. It was a conservative whose family supported Trump, had yard signs for Trump. And then the shooter from a few days ago, turns out he voted for Trump in the past, but has since been more of a never Trump Republican. It seems like most recently, he has supported Vivek Ramaswamy and Nikki Haley. So again, not a liberal. He's clearly a conservative with conservative leanings. So to try to put the blame on Democrats because people on your side are trying to take out your dear leader just seems a bit ludicrous to me. Let's go ahead and take a look at Donald Trump's actual response. You know, they will always want to say that this is our fault. It's our rhetoric that needs to be toned down. But then we have Donald Trump coming out directly after the assassination attempt and saying this. The shooter believed the rhetoric of Biden and Harris, and he acted on it. Their rhetoric is causing me to be shot at when I am the one who is going to save the country, and they are the ones that are destroying the country. So even in this statement right here, Trump is being divisive. He's trying to claim that Democrats are destroying the country. Even on the left, even though we call Trump an existential threat to the nation, we're not saying that he's destroying this country. We are using fact-based arguments to make our case. You're not going to see that from people on the right. If we want to compare that to what Kamala Harris had to say, she said, "There is no place for political violence in our country. I have directed my team to continue to ensure that the Secret Service has every resource, capability, and protective measure necessary to ensure the former president's safety." Things could not be more different. On the one hand, you have Kamala Harris clearly denouncing this violence. And on the other hand, you have Donald Trump trying to lay the blame at the feet of the Democrats while also saying they're destroying the country. It is just pathetic. These double standards have got to stop. On the one hand, you have Republicans coming out and saying that, the Democrats need to tone down their rhetoric, all while there is no self-reflection, there is no acknowledgement that their dear leader has been one of the main contributors to the escalating tensions in this country. He has been one of the most divisive presidents in at least modern American history, if not all of American history. I'm just so fed up with the false equivalences. So let's go ahead and check out how Kayleigh McEnany thinks about these two responses from Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. Is she holding these things in the same regard, or is she going to, let Donald Trump off the hook again?
I think he should question their rhetoric. Again, I only hold the shooter responsible for their actions, but I do wonder why there has not been more of a forceful condemnation. Both of them put out statements condemning this. We heard that chopper talk from President Biden. But after the last attempt, he gave an Oval Office address 24 hours later. That met the moment. Why is he not doing that now? Kamala Harris did not mention this in the DNC, did not mention the assassination attempt in the debate. I would love to see her mention this on the campaign trail. Let's all lower the rhetoric. I don't know that their response has really met the moment this time around.
Donald Trump brought up the first assassination attempt at the debate, and you know how he did that? By blaming people on the left. Why would Kamala Harris even take the time to respond to such incendiary comments? Does that make any sense? You're going to say that both sides need to bring down the tone or bring down the temperature in this country, but you're only calling out Biden for not coming out and making a public statement after this particular attempt? We have to acknowledge that this attempt was much different from the first one. Donald Trump actually got shot in the ear at the first one, whereas just a few days ago, there wasn't even any shots fired at him. So inherently, these things are different. So maybe it doesn't make sense for President Biden to make another national address just because of the lowered intensity of this particular instance. I'm not exactly sure. But you'll see she is not calling out Donald Trump. She is not taking aim at Republicans for their intense rhetoric that they are constantly bringing onto the scene. But actually, let's go ahead and take a look at a short compilation of Donald Trump over the years actually inciting violence. Why isn't she calling this type of stuff out?
I certainly don't incite violence.
Knock the crap out of him. Like to punch him in the face.
I don't condone violence, and I don't talk about violence.
I would have done well, but I would have been boom, boom, boom. I'll beat that.
I don't know if I'll do the fighting myself or if other people will.
Maybe he should have been roughed up, because it was absolutely disgusting what he was doing.
If you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of him, would you? Seriously. Like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you. Try not to hurt him. If you do, I'll defend you in court. Don't worry about it.
Now, admittedly, these are old examples, but we've kind of got used to this type of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump. We also know that he basically said that Mark Milley should be executed for, I think, treason. He was one of the main escalators of violence on January 6th, getting his crowd to storm the Capitol. If we wanted to take the time and point out all of the violent rhetoric coming from Donald Trump, we would be here all day. So we cannot make a false equivalence between what the Republicans do and what the Democrats do, because you cannot find me any elected leaders that spew as much hate and vitriol as Donald Trump does. And we cannot let them get away with placing the blame at the feet of Democrats when their dear leader continues to escalate tensions in this country, continues to divide people. It is just unacceptable, and we cannot let it stand. Republicans do not want to play by the same rules that they want to set for Democrats. And in no world is that okay. But I think that's going to do it for me on this one, folks. If you got anything out of this video, please remember to smash that like button. And please remember to subscribe. I'm just a budding new content creator that would very much like your support. If you want to see how Donald Trump spins false realities for his MAGA supporters that might contribute to some of this escalating rhetoric, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. I will link it. Otherwise, I will see you guys on the next one.